السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes, you can, I guess. Yes. Alhamdulillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. The purpose of this live session is to answer some questions and to receive yours, inshallah, after we finish. We used to have live sessions on Facebook. Now it's on YouTube, alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And if you have any ideas or suggestions about what you want me to talk about next live sessions, inshallah ta'ala, but without repeating the old topics, just let us know and we will take your suggestions into consideration, inshallah. And if you want to ask questions, postpone your questions a little bit until we finish a couple of the ones that we have already received, and we will answer yours, inshallah ta'ala. The first question I received was the authoring of al-Muntaha and al-Iqna', how the authors wrote them, why they differed, how Ibn al-Najjar combined Tanqih and Muqni'. This is basically about the way of authoring Muntaha al-Iradat, the way of authoring al-Iqna'. I always remind people when we talk about Muntaha al-Iradat wal-Iqna' that this is important because of one thing. Because of a lot of things, one of which is what Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab said about al-Iqna' wal-Muntaha, when he said that al-Iqna' wal-Muntaha, the majority of the issues in al-Iqna' wal-Muntaha, they contradict with the clear statement of Imam Ahmad. This is ridiculous and it shouldn't be taken into consideration, but the man said this. The man who claimed to be Hanbali said this. In the live sessions, I answer questions, and it's not like the dars. In the dars, I might give a couple of minutes that I call tarweeh. Tarweeh means this is like a break. So now let's take a break, but in al-ilm, still talking about al-ilm, but a break. The live sessions are more of breaks themselves. Anyways, wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Barakallahu fiqh. Anyways, haven't you seen any Hanbali? Please see this. Haven't you seen the Hanbali who gave you an ijaza in the madhab? And in his ijaza, you find one of two ways usually. This is what I saw. One way, they give you an ijaza in which you find an Isnad that goes through Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. طيب. Wa alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab criticized al-Muntaha al-Iqna'. So would you narrate al-Muntaha al-Iqna' via an Isnad that goes through the man who criticized al-Muntaha al-Iqna', claimed al-Muntaha al-Iqna' to be contradicting with the clear statements of Ahmad? This is a big thing. Most probably you haven't received an ijaza in al-Muntaha al-Iqna' themselves, but you received an ijaza in Aqsa al-Mukhtasarat, for instance, that goes through Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. Aqsa al-Mukhtasarat is taken from al-Iqna'. Taken, I didn't say it was summarized or anything. It is taken from al-Iqna', and usually Ibn Balban agrees with al-Hajjawi in al-Iqna'. Haven't you seen someone who received an ijaza in Dalil al-Talib, which is summarized from Muntaha al-Iradat? The Wahhabiyya, how do they accept it when they know that their Imam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab said what he said about al-Muntaha al-Iqna', yet they use him in the chain of narrators to narrate these books? This is not an issue of Aqidah. This is about the methodology of studying the Hanbali Madhab. Let's go back to al-Muntaha al-Iqna' that Muhammad ibn Wahhab claimed to be contradicting with the clear statement of Ahmad, Nas Ahmad. Muntaha al-Iradat is called Muntaha al-Iradat في الجمع بين المقنع والتنقيح والزيادات. So Muntaha al-Iradat that combines two books, al-Muqna' by Ibn Qudama, التنقيح by Shaykh Alauddin al-Mardawi. وزيادات and extra مسائل that he included in his book from other books like al-Insaf or تصحيح الفروع by Alauddin al-Mardawi as well. You see, the book combined al-Muqna' wal-Tanqih, and the questioner said how? How? He brought anything that Ibn Qudama chose in al-Muqna', because Ibn Qudama had choices in al-Muqna', and some other masail he didn't choose anything. This is also something that you can use when this is something that you can use to make sure that you are on the straight path when you hear someone saying, why don't we study the curriculum of Ibn Qudama, the books of Ibn Qudama? As if Ibn Qudama authored his books to be studied in a certain order, which has no evidence. Anyways, so he brought anything that Ibn Qudama chose, all the tarjihat of Ibn Qudama in al-Muqna', and the Tanqih is basically a book that serves a purpose, one purpose, to give to choose a position among the positions that Ibn Qudama left without choosing in al-Muqna'. So Tanqih is called the Tanqih al-Mushbi' في تحرير أحكام المقنع. يعني this book is basically on al-Muqna'. It has to do with one book in the madhab, al-Muqna'. So we are combining al-Muqna' with one of the books that were written to do something in al-Muqna', and this is the relied upon position of the madhab, and you add some masail to them from al-Insaf and al-Tasihih al-Furu' and other books. Al-Muntaha is simple, and being simple made al-Muntaha easier to study in schools, to be relied upon by muftis, to until they started considering it the mu'tamad of the madhab, especially if it disagrees with al-Iqna'. Now, this is one thing about al-Muntaha. Another thing about al-Muntaha, that it has been explained by al-Buhuti and Ibn al-Najjar, the author of al-Muntaha himself, and it has also been served with Hawashi by Khalwati ibn Qa'id wa al-Buhuti himself. Again, other than the Sharh, he has a Hashiyah. So al-Muntaha is a very important book, as you know, and such a claim that it contradicts with the Nas of Ahmad should not be heard in the first place. And as you all or most of you know that it shall not be heard. This means that you do not talk about it whether it's correct or not. It shouldn't be heard. But because a lot of people do not know it, we have to let them know about it, about Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab's claim that they know that this is what the head of al-Wahhabiyya said about the books of their madhab. I would really appreciate the person who deserts these books because his Imam said that they do not really represent the Hanbali Madhab. Other books might represent the Hanbali Madhab. Ironically, the idea of Ibn Najjar of combining these books that I named, the same idea, the exact same idea crossed the minds of two scholars, at least, and they authored books based on that. Basically, to combine al-Tanqih, al-Muqna' wal-Tanqih. Muqna' Ibn Qudama's book, wal-Tanqih, al-Mardawi's book. And we have these books, but they haven't been served and they haven't been given any due care due to al-Muntaha being better than them and Ibn Najjar being Qadi and other things. طيب. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. طيب. So, this is al-Muntaha. As for al-Iqna', it's a little bit complicated. We can say that al-Iqna' has more than 70 books in it. And this is not a big number. Maybe it's not a big number if compared with the number of books that you have in a book called al-Mustaw'ib in the Madhab, a book authored by one of al-Mutawassitin, one of the scholars of the middle phase in the Hanbali Madhab, al-Mustaw'ib. Wal-Mustaw'ib included books that you do not even know about them. I do not know about them, no one knows about them. It included books of authors. Some of these books, you will not even know who the authors were. I'm afraid to say that some of the authors cannot be found in the books of history or biography. So 70 is not a big number, but it is a big number when you are the author. So to look into 70 books in order to author a book, this is difficult. That's why you do not see a matn. Matn is the basic thing in authoring al-ilm. The basic thing means it's the first step, whether this step is meant to serve beginners, advanced students, or intermediate students. There is no difference. In the end, you will write a matn, you will author a matn, and then explanations, and then hawashi, and so on. So the first step is a matn. This is a matn for advanced students. 4 volumes. Has been published in 4 volumes. This is a lot for a matn. It has been published in 4 volumes by like two different publications of the same book. Both were 4 volumes. This is a lot, right? But this shows you that, yeah, this is the result of having 70 books in mind. And this was by al-Hajjawi. I started with Muntaha al-Iradat, although I should have started with al-Iqna' because al-Iqna' was written before Muntaha al-Iradat, but Muntaha al-Iradat is more important because it's the relied upon position when it comes to the Hanbali curriculum, especially in Azhar Sharif. Most of what I said, and I added other things that I couldn't include in the book that will be published, inshallah. It's called The Foundational Principles of the Hanbali Madhab. All these things are mentioned there, and I added other things here that I didn't include in the book because it would be very difficult for a lot of readers. It should be for beginners. 70 books that included Al-Insaf by al-Mardawi, تصحيح الفروع by al-Mardawi, التنقيح المشبع في تحرير أحكام المقنع by al-Mardawi. Let me ask you a question. I will answer the question, but you type your answers. I will give like 10 seconds to type the answers. And I will just want to see how people answered the question. And I will answer it eventually. Now, in which book do you expect to see the choices of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah? Al-Iqna' or al-Muntaha, based on what I said. Only based on what I said. Al-Iqna' or al-Muntaha. In which book do you expect to see the choices of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah? And let's say you will find the choices of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. He was a Hanbali, a great Hanbali faqih. Neither of them. The choices of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah were mentioned frequently in Al-Iqna'. Why? Because al-Hajjawi, as I said, opened 70 books. No, not in Muntaha. You will not find the choices of Ibn Taymiyyah in al-Muntaha, but in al-Hajjawi's book, yes. Al-Iqna', yes. Yes, ya Mashaykh. Barakallahu feek. Why? Because of a lot of things. One of which, a lot of Ibn Taymiyyah's choices were confused with the relied upon position of the madhab or the positions of the madhab in general. So in order to clarify that these positions of Ibn Taymiyyah do not belong to the madhab, he would say, وَقَالَ الشَّيْخ so and so and so. A shaykh is Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. This is like a term. على صيغة التبري, if this is what has been written, this is correct, يا مولانا الشيخ, يا فضيلة الشيخ أحمد. Yes, على جهة التبري. So they mention his opinions to say this doesn't belong to the madhab. Who did this? He's a student, Ibn Muflih. Yani the one who started this was Ibn Muflih. But they wouldn't say it. They wouldn't say, yes, this is the position of Ibn Taymiyyah and we do not have anything to do with it. It doesn't belong to the madhab. Please do not confuse the positions of Ibn Taymiyyah that can be Hanbali wujuh or awjuh with the positions of Ibn Taymiyyah that were based on his usul that do not agree with the Hanbali usul. These are two different things. واضح? Yeah, you'll find it a lot in Iqna'. You'll find another position other than the relied upon position of the madhab in al-Iqna'. A lot. Another position, like two positions, the relied upon position and another things that al-Hajjawi mentioned. This was the sunnah of al-Mutawassitin, to give you 2 positions, 3 positions in the madhab, because most probably if you are a student of knowledge and you have reached that level of studying more than 1 position, then you will have the ability to do tarjih and give us the relied composition of the madhab. In the mutaakhirin phase, we started having the books of 1 position to determine the relied composition, because people cannot do this anymore. It's difficult for them. The author of Iqna, in the majority of the issues, mentioned 1 position. Some of the issues he mentioned 2 positions. Some of the issues he mentioned the choices of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. I talked before about the importance of Ibn Taymiyyah in fiqh. So you have to refer back to these recordings, to these sessions in which I mentioned the position of Ibn Taymiyyah in fiqh, because he was really important. I'm talking now about a different thing. His choices, when they were clarified by Hajjawi to be something other than the madhab, something that doesn't belong to the madhab, his own choices as a mujtahid. The one who started this was his student Ibn Muflih. And do not expect those scholars to give you clear statements about this doesn't belong to the madhab or so, because this was not the way to author the books of ilm at that time. Till now, maybe now people clarify everything when they write a research paper or something. But it wasn't like that. At least the scholars didn't talk like that. Like, I think I covered most of why they differed. Ibn Najjar combined the Tanqih al-Muqna', we answered this. How the authors wrote it, we answered this. Why they differed because they were 2 mujtahideen, 2 a'imma in the madhab. Both were mujtahideen. This can be understood in the light of what the author of Al-Insaf, Shaykh Alauddin Mardawi, said, when he said, when there is an issue of disagreement in the madhab, you can follow any mujtahid, yani any mujtahid who made a choice and claimed one way or another that his choice was the madhab. According to him, this is the relied composition of the madhab. For instance, to make this clearer, you'll find Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la having choices. Some choices. When Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la chose this, he was choosing it as the relied composition of the madhab. Other issues, he didn't have any choices because it's not. Al-Khiraqi himself, the first matn in the madhab, in the 4th century, he had choices to determine that this is the relied composition of the madhab according to Al-Khiraqi, according to himself. As long as you are following one of the mujtahideen in his choice, you are in the safe side. You are following one position in al-madhab that has been chosen by one of the mujtahideen as the relied composition of the madhab. After al-Iqna and Muntaha, you can not easily go against al-Iqna and Muntaha, and we talked about this many times, and even the fatwa that we published about Salat al-Jumu'ah, if I remember correctly, had a lot of details about this issue, going against the mu'tamad, that this is not something that you can do if you are Hanbali. طيب. But if al-Iqna' wal-Muntaha do not agree on a position to be the relied composition, then we have a lot of ways to do tarjih. This is not the important thing. The important thing, why did they differ? in the first place. As I said, because they were mujtahideen. The reliable position of the madhab is not Quran. It's not nas, statement from the sharia, from Allah or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even the statements of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they can be understood differently by different mujtahideen. So sometimes it's difficult to determine what the reliable position is. See? Now, and based on the criteria that Al-Shaykh Alauddin al-Mardawi followed in determining what the reliable position is in his 3 books, you might see that Alauddin al-Mardawi himself at some point didn't respect this criteria. That's why you might find al-Muntaha following him, al-Iqna' not following him, or the other way around. So it's a matter of ijtihad in the end. You follow anything. You follow al-Iqna', it's fine. You follow al-Muntaha, it is fine. But be careful. You follow because you do taqleed. You follow. Do not call yourself a mujtahid who made a choice and you say in the end al-Muntaha in this position is better than al-Iqna'. A lot of mashayikh said al-Muntaha is chosen over al-Iqna' generally. This is wrong. You can follow al-Muntaha. It seems safer all the way. As a matter of taqleed, there will be mujtahideen in the madhab. You can be mujtahid in the madhab. If you are qualified, you will be mujtahid in the madhab. This can still be done after a lot of study. At least nowadays. I'm not sure about the future. I guess things will get worse. But in the end, the mujtahideen can do the tarjih. And when it comes to the tarjih, it's based on evidence. If you want to follow some position, follow it as a muqallid, not as a mujtahid who claims Muntaha to be better than al-Iqna' or as you give it the priority to follow al-Muntaha over al-Iqna'. Even the mashayikh who said so, in my opinion and in my mashayikh's opinions, they made a mistake. And they were just mentioning something for beginners. When they look at al-Muntaha al-Iqna', they just follow al-Muntaha, easier for them. And I mentioned that before as well. طيب. We answered all this. Why? What is Hanbali Tasawwuf? Maybe I talked before about Tasawwuf and they said that you have Hanbali Madhab is a little bit complicated because you have Hanbali Fiqh, Hanbali Aqidah and Hanbali Tasawwuf. Maybe this is the question about the Hanbali Tasawwuf. When you hear it, it might sound strange a little bit because you do not know what the Hanbali Tasawwuf is. Why does he call it Tasawwuf? Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I will answer all your questions once I finish, inshallah. And we will restrict ourselves to 1 hour, hopefully, inshallah. First of all, it's not important what you call it. يعني Imam Shafi'i, when he said Imam Ahmad, Imam fi thamani khisal. So Ahmad is Imam in 8 things, 8 qualities. And he mentioned az-zuhd wal-faqr. And faqr doesn't mean poverty. It means al-iftiqar ila Allah ta'ala. The feeling that you need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you are in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's zuhd? Do you know what zuhd is? I believe so. So isn't this the main topic of الصوفية, of التصوف? يعني one word can just, actually you can find a lot of similarities between الزهد والفقر أو الافتقار إلى الله تعالى, and in the end these are the meanings that the Sufiya keep talking about, and other meanings maybe. Ahmad Imam in these things. And you know that the scholars of Tasawwuf and other scholars, they categorized As-Sufiya into three things, three categories. The Sunni Tasawwuf, the Salafi Tasawwuf, these are the terms. The philosophical Tasawwuf. Philosophical, this has to do with people like, whether you like them or not, whether you agree with them or not. I'm giving examples to show you who they are. Philosophical, this is like, for instance, Ibn al-Arabi al-Hatimi, Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn al-Arabi al-Hatimi. This is the philosophical Tasawwuf. And other people, other examples. Let's just mention one name. Salafi Tasawwuf al-Junayd. Okay. Al-Junayd Abdullah ibn Mubarak, the Salaf. Salafi doesn't mean contemporary, doesn't have anything to do with the contemporary Salafiyya. Sunni Tasawwuf, they say like Imam al-Shazuli, for instance. You will find that although we might disagree with the categorization itself, because there will be some overlapping, you can say that Ahmad Hanbal belong to the Salafi and the Sunni. The Salafi and the Sunni together. Not the philosophical Tasawwuf. Ahmad rejected that, and he had a lot of problems with that. طبعا Ibn Arabi came after Ahmad Hanbal. So Ahmad Hanbal didn't talk about him. You do not understand from what I said that Ahmad Hanbal had a problem with Ibn al-Arabi. He had a problem with this way. We do not know if he saw Ibn Arabi what he would say at the time of Ibn Arabi. So this is not our discussion. Yani do not rush into conclusions. Observe a little longer before you have conclusions. Most of the Hanabilah, including Ibn Taymiyyah himself, Shaykh Taqi belong to a tariqah in التصوف. And the moment Sidi Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani died, and before even his death, all of the A'imma of al-Hanabilah started following his tariqah. So most of al-Hanabilah were Qadiri. You see, Abdul Qadir al-Jilani was the Shaykh of Muwaffiq Ibn Qudama. Ibn Qudama stayed with him like 40 days or so. And Ibn Taymiyyah followed the tariqah, and the one who told us about it was his student, Shaykh al-Hafiz Ibn Abd al-Hadi followed the tariqah of Sidi Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. This doesn't mean that the Qadiri tariqah that you see right now follows the same thing. And this doesn't mean that the Sufiya that you see right now follow the same thing that Ibn Taymiyyah followed or that Shaykh Sidi Abdul Qadir al-Jilani established. On the contrary, you'll find a lot of mistakes, you'll find a lot of problems in these turuq, especially in the West. So you have to trust that they follow the Sharia first before you follow any Sufi tariq. What is the Hanbali Tasawwuf after all this? It's following the way of Ahmad Hanbal, which is the way of Sidi Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, that is based on ulum al-Sharia, because there is no separation between the ilm and the tasawwuf. Tasawwuf is ilm, and the tasawwuf, even if it's theoretical, it has a practical part that you call al-adab. طيب. This is the Hanbali Tasawwuf. Other Hanabilah chose different turuq to follow. Some of them were khalwatiyya, following the khalwati tariqah, like the great Shaykh in the golden chain of the madhab, al-Khalwati. And lately, like in the last 300 years, 200 years, you can see that there was some Hanabilah who followed the Shaduli tariqah. But in the end, the Hanabilah are supposed to be Qadiriyya. But the Sufiya say a very beautiful thing, that you do not choose the tariq chooses you. Which means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the real doer of things. This was all about the Hanbali Tasawwuf. We can take one more question from this, and we can postpone the rest. Then we can answer your questions in the comments. Why Isnad and permission to teach is important, especially in our madhab. Especially in our madhab, the questioner wanted the answer to be focused more on our madhab, to highlight the importance of the Isnad and the permission to teach in our madhab, specifically in our madhab. Although, this is what I understand from the question, although he knows, or he already knew that it is important in the other madhab, but let the justifications be related to our madhab. Now, first of all, you all know these reports from Salaf about that this is deen, this ilm is deen, is religion. And you should see from whom you take your religion. From whom you take your religion, this is the idea of the Isnad. Now, everything is narrated. If you want to say that Ahmad Hanbal said, Malik said, Abdullah ibn Mubarak said, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said, you narrate. You narrate it from them. You have a chain of narrators. Why don't we just accept what they said without investigating the chain of narrators? Especially if they say something good. Like, for instance, you have something that Ahmad Hanbal said, and it's a very good, like the meaning is very good. And this is the philosophy of some laymen. I'm afraid to say some shuyukh, but let's call them laymen. If it's good like that, then why would we reject it? Especially that it was said by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, for instance. Do you know who said this? I will mention a name. Shaykh Abdul Hamid Kishk. Shaykh Hamid Kishk is a great man. Was a great man, rahimahullah. Was a great khatib. And he would mention a lot of weak and fabricated hadiths. And when someone asked him about it, something that Abu Bakr Siddiq said, he said, you think that Abu Bakr Siddiq is too great to say this? Or this saying is too great for Abu Bakr Siddiq to say it? Yani, do you think that this is not something that is expected from Abu Bakr Siddiq? Yeah, this philosophy. So why don't we follow this? Especially that it wouldn't harm. And when it comes to the Prophet ﷺ, we take a lot of other things into consideration, but when it comes to anyone else, no. We will just open the door and take whatever comes as long as the meaning is not bad. If we do this, then anything that is narrated from anyone, as long as it's good, shall be accepted. And there will be no way of measuring people. We wouldn't know the good ones from the corrupted ones. We wouldn't know whether he was from Salaf al-Salih or Salaf al-Talih. Anyone who comes before you is your Salaf, one of your ancestors in al-ilm. We wouldn't know whether they were good or bad. So let's now expect that they said just good things and let's accept them. Very ridiculous. This is superficial. Then you need an Isnad. You need an Isnad for the great A'immah of Islam. What do you expect? Then you do not need an Isnad when it comes to someone like me. Yani when I teach, you require, imagine this, you stand before Ahmad bin Hanbal, and now Ahmad bin Hanbal talked, but because you have 1,200 years between you and Ahmad bin Hanbal, you ask him, metaphorically, because you cannot talk to him, at least in most cases you cannot talk to him. Metaphorically, you say, I need an Isnad. I need to bridge that gap of 1,200 years. This was Ahmad bin Hanbal. And this was Ahmad bin Hanbal, who is better than me, whose the transmitters of his madhab are better than anything that you rely on in receiving al-ilm from me. Yani, those narrators, those great A'immah of the madhab who narrated his madhab, you can trust them more than trusting this video, for instance. Or then more than trusting me as long as I'm still alive. Al-hayy la tu'manu alayhi al-fitna, as they said. And yet you require an Isnad and you require the authenticity of the narration and everything, according to the conditions of al-ulama. I come to you and I talk about the madhab, and then I will, because you sound knowledgeable about what you talk about. Now, if you can evaluate things, then you are knowledgeable. If you cannot evaluate things, then you are not knowledgeable. And the other way around, If you are not knowledgeable, then do not evaluate, because you have no experience, you have no knowledge. Then why would you listen to someone who will just explain a book because he looks like a sheikh, sounds like a sheikh, or talks like a sheikh, or introduces himself as a sheikh? يعني the scholars didn't accept what Ahmad said without an isnad. They didn't accept what the Prophet ﷺ said without an isnad. They didn't accept what the companions said without an isnad. Without an isnad that has certain conditions, that meets specific criteria. This is the importance of the isnad. From whom did you take al-ilm? And if you took it from the books, and we talked about that a lot, if you took it from the books, you understand that this is your understanding, your mere understanding of what was written. No guidance, nothing. This is the importance of the Isnad. The Ummah is the Ummah of the Isnad. The Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions was to receive al-ilm, not to write it down in books and then send it to people. This was much easier, by the way, and it didn't really happen a lot. It happened once in a very specific thing, in one thing actually, when it comes to al-ilm. This is the importance of the isnad. The importance of seeking permission. Yeah. Why do you seek permission? Actually, seeking permission is seeking ijazah. Ijazah to teach. Specific ijazah to teach a specific thing. Specific ijazah to teach a specific thing. It's for you. It's not for the sheikh whom you take the permission from. It's for you. Yeah, you, when you seek the permission, it protects you. Now, I want someone to challenge me. Tell me, you taught this in Egypt. Your mashayikh are still alive. How dare you? How dare me? My sheikh gave me permission. The other sheikh gave me permission. The other sheikh praised my sharh. The other sheikh attended it. It protects you. When you seek permission, you are protected. In a world of Facebook and social media, you do not really feel the risk that you take when you say something that might contradict with the valued positions of men. You have al-Jama'a al-Ilmiyya, the community of ilm, and they have established opinions. If you contradict them and do not call yourself mujaddid, and you're not reforming or renewing anything, let's face the reality, most of people are less than that. And in order to go through this phase of I'm going to reform, you'll have first to go through the phase of let's understand deeply what our ancestors said. So nowadays, you see, at some point, some of my students, they have these posts of unpopular opinion. When it comes to coffee, it's fine, right? But imagine the same thing, unpopular opinion, when it's about something in al-ilm. Unpopular opinion, the Hanbali Madhab is not really a Madhab and Ahmad is not an Imam. Unpopular opinion. Yeah. Imagine you, as I said before, imagine yourself in the 200 years ago, 300 years ago. You and your opinion will be just sitting somewhere where no one listens to you or gives any care about what you say. Now you have Facebook, right? This platform allows a lot of people to see your unpopular opinion, your strange shuzuz in al-ilm. So let's talk about it. Now this develops a little bit and becomes, okay, I'll teach. And if people do not like it, خلاص. It's not really up to them. I do not really care about what people say. And when I say people, I do not mean laymen who will praise the ignorant. I'm talking about the ilmi community, community of ilm, the mashayikh. Yeah, but not all the mashayikh are good. The good ones, the ones who are good. If they agree on something, if there is a norm, if there is a tradition, then it has to be correct. Until you prove otherwise. Anyway, seeking permission protects you, protects the one who wants to teach. This should be clear. طيب, this is enough. Let's take your questions. What are the difference between the Ash'aris and the Atharis? How can we answer this now? A lot of differences. Or few differences, but they are deep ones. Basically, they belong to the same sect. They are both from Al-Sunnah al-Jama'ah, and they are both Ta'ifa al-Najiyya al-Mansur, Ash'ariyya wal-Athariyya, Hanbaliyya. But in order to give you the details about the differences, these are a lot of issues. Please comment with your questions so that I answer all of them now, hopefully. Yes, I talked a lot about this, the issue of the attributes, the differences between Hanbali and Ash'ari. How was your talk with Dr. Shadee? Many brothers would like to see read on his book. Shaykh Shadee al-Masree, I was really happy to appear with him. It was really beneficial for me in the first place. And I was happy that he and other people in the West had interest in knowing the real Hanbali positions in some of the Aqidah Masail, Fiqh Masail, and even the Masail of Usul al-Fiqh. I was really happy to be with him. He is a decent person. Barakallahu fihi wa nafa'allahu bih. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Which one should one study for? Muntaha or al-Iqna'? Should you study Muntaha first or al-Iqna'? As I said, as a part, the only thing that you study in the curriculum is al-Muntaha. Iqna' will be a reference. We tailored something for people to understand, although this doesn't really help. Yani if you want to study Hanbali Madhab, just start, even without knowing what you will do after 10 years. After 10 years, you will be a different person. You study Muntaha, al-Iqna' is just reference in that case. For the Shaykh who teaches al-Muntaha has to read al-Muntaha, al-Iqna', the explanations of al-Muntaha, al-Iqna', the Hawashi of al-Muntaha, al-Iqna', the Hawashi of other books, a list of 10 to 15 books. The student, you study al-Muntaha, you study the explanation of Mansur al-Buhuti, Sharh Daqaiq ul-Nuha, and that's it. Al-Iqna' is not studied. Al-Iqna' would be a reference in that case. What is your daily routine? I wake up, I work, eat, sleep. I do other things, but Allah musta'an. Barakallahu fiqh, ya Shaykh Mubin. Many teachers in the West allow laymen to follow a strong position in the madhab, For example, the choices of Ibn Qudama, even if they go against the Mu'tamad, is this a valid approach? To tell you about the position that was chosen by Ibn Qudama. This means that I know the position that Ibn Qudama chose, the most authentic position of Ibn Qudama. Ibn Qudama might have a position in al-Mughni, another in al-Muqna', another in al-Kafi, another in Umdat al-Fiqh. So 4 positions. Which one? Anyone, this is wrong. The most authentic one, yes. Based on what? Based on books. Let's say so. If you ask me, I will say based on books. If you ask me a question and I want to give you Ibn Qudama's position, I will not just say based on books. But for now, I'm trying to show you, you do not act according to what I'm going to say now. It's just an example, a superficial example, which is partially correct, based on books. So which book is the most important one? Al-Muqna', then Al-Kafi, then Al-Mughni, then Umdat al-Fiqh. This order. So, or based on, not or, a step that comes before this, based on the date of choosing that position. What was the last thing that he chose? You see, it's a complicated thing. Yes, it's correct in general. This is a correct approach to give them the position of Ibn Qudama. The rajih position of Ibn Qudama. The one that Ibn Qudama said in the end, or the one that is most authentic by Ibn Qudama. So not any position by Ibn Qudama. The choice of Ibn Qudama, that is the most authentic choice of Ibn Qudama. You see? Yes, this is correct. Why? Because this is a mujtahid, and when he chose it to be the relied upon position. This opens another discussion. If you see Ibn Qudama choosing it as his own choice, and you have indicators in the sentence that tell you this was his own choice, not the choice of the madhab. Like what? He chose something for the madhab, couple of lines, he chose another thing that he claimed to be arjah, Azhar, or whatever. He said the madhab is so and so. And in the end of the paragraph, he said something, a different thing. It's a complicated issue. Most of people in the East and the West do not realize these things before giving fatwa outside the relied upon position. That's why most of people nowadays, they just follow the relied upon position. The respectable mashayikh of the Hanbali Madhab, and there are few ones, they just follow the relied upon position in order not to get themselves in a lot of confusion. Giving a different position, this requires a lot of investigation. Now, do you believe that contemporary Salafis take from the Hanbali? They take from, what do you mean by taking from it? From the Hanbali Madhab? They take from the Hanbali Madhab. They follow the Hanbali Madhab in some issues, but they are people who contradict themselves. Assalamu alaikum, may Allah bless you. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wa iyyakum ya fadhil. Saffarini said the Tawheed is divided in 3 parts. Rububiyyah, Uluhiyyah, Asma' wa Sifat. Is that the Mu'tamad in the Hanbali Aqidah? No, this is not the Mu'tamad of the Hanbali Aqidah. Can Shirk of Mushrikeen be only on Uluhiyyah? It has to be on Uluhiyyah and Rububiyyah. You see this? If we consider these meanings, Shirk is Shirk in the end. And Hanabilah do not make such distinctions. Saffarini wanted to have to reconcile with what Ibn Taymiyyah said. It was a trial that didn't really work. And you'll find that the Hanabilah do not follow this. Saffarini wanted to take Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim under the umbrella of the Hanabilah. He himself couldn't. He rejected a lot of their positions. Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Are there any books women can look to according to the Hanabilah? The rulings of birth control, removing facial hair, nail polish. Very good. such books do not really exist in the Hanbali Madhab. You might find a book for Ibn al-Jawzi, another book for another Imam. But if you want to study the real Hanbali Madhab in its developed version, you'll study the books of al-Mutaakhirin, the late phase of the Hanbali Madhab. And if you study this, you'll find that these topics were covered in the books of the Hanbali Madhab. The examples that you mentioned, except for birth control, yes, except for this, can be covered in the chapters of al-Tahara, purification. Yes. Removal, facial hair removal, nail polish invalidating the wudu, birth control. Birth control cannot be covered in the classical books. They can be covered, but indirectly, and not in the chapters of Tahara, if I remember correctly. Indirectly in other chapters, in different chapters of the Hanbali. How is Zad al-Mustaqni' in relation to being the same author? Zad al-Mustaqni' in relation to al-Iqna' being the same author. Al-Hajjawi authored both books, Zad al-Mustaqni' and al-Iqna'. طبعا Zad al-Mustaqni' was not his favorite son. Al-Iqna' was his favorite son. And the Hashiyah of Tanqih also. Hajjawi had a Hashiyah on Tanqih, a very important one, by the way. طيب. He, first of all, let's say that in Zad al-Mustaqni' he had a different purpose. So this difference in his motives made a difference in the outcome. In Zad al-Mustaqni' he was just trying to summarize al-Muqni' by Ibn Qudama. In al-Iqna' no. He saw that there was a need for having a relied upon position. And that's why you'll find a lot of positions in Zad al-Mustaqni' that contradict the relied upon position of al-Hajjawi in al-Iqna'. And you'll see that the same way, the same style was followed by al-Hajjawi because he was the same author of the two books. Cannot see. What is the correct Aqidah behind the verse? وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Read the books of tafsir. Read the books of tafsir. You'll be surprised. Any book of tafsir, just read any book of tafsir. Any book of tafsir that was authored by a scholar, Ya Abu Talib. Some use this verse to do takfir of Muslims rulers who use democracy. Let's take the issue from the beginning. The one who used this, we are talking about scholars. How do you know whether this person is a scholar or not, qualified or not? How can you know whether he was qualified or not? With whom did he study? Basically, even if you are Wahhabi, just take this into consideration. Someone who studied with al-Wahhabiyya will go to this madhab, okay, which makes you look into al-Wahhabiyya differently. Were they real shuyukh, scholars? Are we talking about scholars? I'm giving a very short answer, and it is not even an answer. I'm just giving you some guidance about it. Read the book of tafsir. Barakallahu feekum. Jazakumullahu khairan. In the Hanbali Madhab, is it okay to wipe over the socks that we are all wearing nowadays? No, it's not permissible to do so unless the socks are really thick, according to the conditions of wiping over al-khuf in the madhab, same conditions, and that it can be walked in. You can walk in it. You do not walk in it in your apartment. You walk in it like when you go to the masjid or you go to do something. You cannot wipe on most of the socks nowadays unless it's a really thick one. For instance, I had a leather pair and I wiped on them after going to the masjid and buying a lot of things like walking for half an hour or so. After doing this, so I saw that they cannot be torn, that I can walk in them in the streets of Egypt. When I saw this, I started wiping on them, and they were made of leathers. Imagine if you are wearing something made of cotton or so. By the way, this ruling is very obvious in the madhab, but some people, they just do not understand the obvious. Some shuyukh do not understand the obvious. Do you teach in Azhar Masjid? No, I do not teach in Azhar Masjid. This is a great honor. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Can you give tafsil regarding how the Hanabilah believe in Allah fi sama? We believe in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. We believe in what the Prophet said without any interpretation or explanation or giving definitions, without adding, without omitting, without anything. We just believe in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. Allah fi sama, Allah fi sama. That's it. We believe in what the Quran says, what the Sunnah says. We do not believe in anything else and we do not add to it. The bid'ah starts when you ask me about, do you believe that he is really in Sama? You added the word really or the reality or literally or the actual meaning of him being. Even the Salafis do not accept such meaning. They do not accept the meaning of Allah is surrounded by clouds, for instance. You see? Or that he is above heavens and that there is a distance between him and heavens. Even the Salafis do not accept such a meaning. We just believe in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said and what his Prophet said. Read Lum'at al-I'tiqad, Muhammad Umar Mustafa. Read Lum'at al-I'tiqad. And you can refer to the Hashiyah of Muwaffaq. You'll find a lot of these things explained. But Lum'at al-I'tiqad itself is enough. But I'm afraid that you'll read it in English. Then try to read the version that we relied on when we explained Lum'at al-I'tiqad in the Hashiyah. In what sense does an agreed upon ahad narration give certainty in matters of Aqidah? In the sense of the exact wording of the narration, even if others exist, or in the general meaning? Agreed upon ahad narration. What has been agreed upon? The meaning or the wording? The wording means that the wording and the meaning has been agreed upon. The meaning only, then the meaning only. So it's an ahad narration, and people agreed on that meaning. I believe because there are different versions of the same ahad hadith, then the meaning itself is hujjah, is evidence, certain piece of evidence. I hope it answers your question. This was a good question. Shaykh, there are some people who say Allah can lie, but he chooses not to. What is the Hanbali position on this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala منزه عن مثل هذا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot lie. It's not even possible for him to lie, subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it was possible, he wouldn't be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the brief answer. In France, there is a lot of false halal meat companies. We have to make a research before buying our meat from a Muslim butcher. Can we trust him blindly? Thank you very much. You can trust Muslims based on their apparent righteousness, which means that if he looks righteous, you are not supposed to investigate more research. No, you're just supposed to buy from him. Let's say that the butcher that you buy from one day showed some signs of fisk, so his righteousness now is questioned. You stop buying from him. You stop buying from him. Now, This is what the fuqaha call al-adala al-zahira. This is enough in such issues. What do the Hanabilah say about positions like qiyam al-Hawadith fi dhat-illah? Any sane, anyone, the sane people, the sane individuals, خلاص, anyone who is mukallaf, sane and mature, will never say that their qiyam al-Hawadith billah is a possible thing. This is not possible. Why did Ibn Taymiyyah say this? He invented something that he couldn't defend. Okay? Yes. He couldn't defend when I can defend anything if I'm writing a book. But when it comes to debates, discussions, yeah. There you see whether I can defend it or not. Okay? Qiyam al-Hawadith bi dhat-illah ta'ala is impossible. And this is the meaning that the Hanabilah repeat in their books. There can never be anything hadith about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This includes the attributes. Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma ameen wa iyaakum. Barakallahu fikum. Mus'ab. What is the ruling regarding stun, the halal meat? I do not really understand. If someone clarifies this part of the question, the word before halal meat, I do not know what it means. If someone clarifies what it means, it will be helpful, especially if the questioner himself explained what it means. Nothing beats his explanation. هو Shaykh Mus'ab. Do some Hanabilah believe that God changes when it comes to things like the Kalam of Allah? A'udhu billah. Ya akhi, if a Hanbali believes in that, he wouldn't be a Hanbali, at least in Aqidah. Okay? And it doesn't have any indication to say, does a Hanbali in fiqh believe that Allah does so and so in Aqidah? It doesn't have any indication. If we are talking about the Hanabilah in Aqidah, not even in fiqh, you cannot find anyone making such a statement about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya mashayikh, even I haven't seen the except this from me, the Salafi in the Middle East wouldn't say these things. And even if you are Salafi in the West, do not say these things, because now you're not repeating the Salafi Aqidah or just saying the Salafi Aqidah. You're now presenting the Salafi Aqidah in a Christian pattern. Now you are thinking about Jesus, maybe changing. يا أخي لا حول ولا قوة. لا يا أخي ما فيش حد من الحنابلة بيقول كده. No, this is not correct. I'm lost. What do you think of Kitab as-Sifat? Sifat of Ibn Qudama. Cannot read this. I'm really sorry. I'm not sure what you are talking about. Like, if we know that Allah does that which is beneficial and that which isn't, how do we have reconcile in having hope that there is good for us in everything Allah decrees for us? Because basically, as the Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّ أَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ خَيْرٍ. It's all good for you. It's all good for you based on how you react. And this is the part of the hadith that you do not usually understand, or you do not usually take into consideration, based on how you react. Because the rest of hadith tells you, if you have a good blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah. If you have something that is a challenge or ibtila, have patience. In both cases, you are rewarded. That's why it's always good for you, as long as you are a believer, acting like a believer. Now, we read in Kashaf al-Qina' that making, Isnad is kufr, yes. what is the difference between istighatha, which some ulama allowed, and this kufr mentioned. The istighatha mentioned in Kashaf al-Qina' that she mentioned, istighatha mentioned in Kashaf al-Qina', the part that al-Hajjawi wrote from what Ibn Taymiyyah said is clear in the istighatha, in which you believe that the real doer is the one you are asking for help. You say, Ya Hussein, I want a child. Istighatha. Regardless of this being haram or halal. Now we're talking about kufr or not. Is this kufr? Yes, if you believe in al-Hussein being the real doer of things, then it's kufr. If we are talking about someone who doesn't believe in this, then it's not kufr. Not anything that you say can be kufr, regardless of your intention. Right? First of all, you are not Allah. Secondly, you give rulings based on your knowledge. If someone said, Ya Hussein aghisni, this should not be done, right? This causes fitna, this is bad, this. Say all what you want to say. Now the question is, this is kufr? How without knowing his intention? If he believes that al-Hussein benefits him, harms him, does things in reality, then this is kufr. If he believes that al-Hussein is a metaphorical reason, it's not kufr. The discussion will be whether this is haram or not. This is something that the Hanabilah didn't tackle. And I gave a position about it before, but it's not important to repeat this now. Are there any books written pertaining to the Muwaswas in Dhamm al-Muwaswisin Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi? Ibn Qudama had a very beautiful book about this issue, Waswasa. Yes, I know what it says, yeah. Muhammad bin Azuz. I know. Barakallahu fikum. He might mean stand as in before electricity. If it's not slaughtered, if it died because of electricity, I'm not sure if you mean whether it was slaughtered by an electric machine, whether you say Bismillah and you let the machine do the work of cutting, or it was died because of electricity. The electric current killed it. If it's the second, like the electric current killed it, this is haram. Do not eat that. It's najis. Ibn Taymiyyah's theory of language. This is really difficult to explain now. What do you think of the book As-Sunnah that has chapter called them Abu Hanifa? Is that book authentic? Some of it is not authentic. Ahmad Hanbali himself had a bad position about Imam Abi Hanifa. Then he changed his position at some point. You can read about it in the books of Azhar and Ta'dil, by the way. لا, Abdullah ibn Ahmad is not a mudallis. Abdullah ibn Ahmad, maybe he had a bad position about Imam Abi Hanifa. Yani Abdullah ibn Ahmad didn't really like Abu Hanifa. Had the opinions of Abi Hanifa that reached him, maybe they were not really good opinions, or they were manipulated, or in the end, who cares about Abdullah ibn Ahmad, to be honest? Yani Abdullah ibn Ahmad is just a narrator, he wasn't a scholar. Why do people take his positions as scholarly positions? He wasn't Ahmad bin Hanbal, and he doesn't represent Ahmad bin Hanbal. This is really important, by the way. I'm not sure why people act like that, but in the end, Abu Hanifa was a great Imam. Ahmad himself, in the end, accepted him and praised him. Just have a look at the books of Al-Jarh wa Ta'dil. What do you think of the is Imam and I'm not sure what this name is. Al-Iji's, yes, position on the Kalam of Allah similar to the Hanabilah? Not similar to the Hanabilah. The one who might be a little bit on the same page was Sharif al-Jurjani in the explanation of Al-Iji's Mawaqif. But in the end, by the way, all of that was mentioned in Al-Ayn wal-Athar. And while explaining Al-Ayn wal-Athar, you'll find that I have mentioned that we do not agree 100% on what Sharif al-Jurjani said. Yeah. I heard Ibn Taymiyyah did Tawhid كيف is this correct and is this good? طيب, let's enhance and let's promise me next time يا مشايخ, not because of this question, I'm talking about this question and the next question and some previous questions. Let's enhance the questions. So now you know that we will be live again in the near future, hopefully, inshallah. Next week, this week. So prepare your questions. And by saying prepare your questions, I mean work on them, like put some effort in the questions. For instance, I would avoid words like good and bad. I would avoid things like this is correct, this is incorrect. I would avoid things like what do you think of? I can answer all those questions, but to enrich the live sessions, let's enhance the questions. As the scholars, as many scholars said, one of which is Shaykh Zarruq al-Maliki, حسن السؤال نصف العلم. The quality of the question is half knowledge, half of the knowledge. So promise me that we will enhance our questions, please. No, do not, please. There is nothing to apologize for. It wasn't your questions, yeah, Mashaykh. The last couple of questions. No, I'm talking about a general thing. If you just scroll up, you will see a lot of similar things. Okay, I haven't been offended or anything. طيب. Ibn Taymiyyah did Tawhid al-Kayf. This is what Ibn Taymiyyah claimed. I'm doing Tawhid al-Kayf. What is al-Kayf? This might be the important question. Is this correct? Yes. Is this good? Yes. As long as you do Tawhid of al-Ma'na, the meaning. Tawhid of the meaning. Is Abdullah ibn Ahmad's creed incorrect? Like do you mean his creed, his book, or his creed like what he had in his heart? If you mean his book, the book of As-Sunnah, for instance, no, it's full of correct statements, by the way, and other statements that do not indicate anything, and other statements that we will definitely reject. And some hadiths that cannot be authentic, and some hadiths that are authentic, but they can never be used in Aqidah. Some positions that the Hanabilah do not agree upon. Ya Mashaykh, Abdullah ibn Ahmad ibn Hanbal died in the 3rd century. What had the Hanabilah been doing all that time? They saw his Aqidah, they saw his books, and they chose to take from him and to avoid some of what he said. Right? He was just a narrator, Ya Mashaykh, a great hafiz of hadith. He wasn't a great imam in fiqh and Aqidah. Also remember, Ahmad Hanbal died and Abdullah was really young. Okay, was really young. This means he narrated a lot of things, but not necessarily that he had maturity when it comes to the ilm that he acquired. So we will have to, خلاص, stop your questions, please. Let's answer the ones that we have right now, and we will take the rest, inshallah, next time we meet you. Can you explain the Hanbali position on salt? The Hanabilah when salt والحرف. Briefly, Sawt wal Harf. We have ayat and we have ahadith that indicate that Kalam Allah Azza wa Jal is بصوت وحرف. So it has sawt and it has harf. Call them attributes, call them the attributes of the attribute, call them whatever you want. We just affirm and confirm what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet said. We do not explain what is sawt is, we do not explain what al-harf is. We believe in sawt wa harf qadimain, both are qadim, they have no beginning. We believe in something that is different from letters and voices or sounds. We just confirm the same wording and we do tafweed to this sawt and to this harf. Ibn Qudama had a very good book about the topic. طيب. This is a good link shared by Sheikh Naveed, the admin. A good link about how to ask questions. See this video, but I was a little bit angry about a lot of bad questions. Is there a text narrated from Imam Ahmad entitled Al-I'tiqad? This is no, I do not know of this unless you mean Usul al-Sunnah, because some people call it I'tiqad Ahmad. May Allah bless. Ameen wa iyaakum, barakallahu feekum. Book. I'm not sure what this is. Ameen, barakallahu feekum. Muhammad said that Ashari are from Ahlul Bid'ah. Bring me this. Where Ibn Qudama said Al-Ashari are from Ahlul Bid'ah. Is this the mainstream Hanbali position or is it? I want this. Ibn Qudama said Al-Ashari are from Ahlul Bid'ah. This doesn't even sound like him. After a while, when you sit with someone, when you are friends with someone, you know how they talk, right? I'm not friends with Ibn Qudama, I wish. But this is not even how he talks, or how he talked. No, he didn't say so. He said something else. I know what he said. And it's not the mainstream of the Hanabilah, ya Shaykh. No, this is not the mainstream of the Hanabilah. Hanabilah didn't really take this into consideration, what he said about the Ash'ari. And he wasn't really straightforward about it. And they didn't really agree on it. We reject that position. Now, giving this categorization or judging a sect like al-Ash'ari, this is not a matter of taqleed at all. This is not a matter of taqleed. Yes. And we can never accept someone's position, except for Imam Ahmad, for sure. We cannot accept someone's position that some people are innovators based on his position without backing this up with evidence. If it's backed up with evidence, we discuss the evidence. This is when it comes to al-Aqidah. Al-Aqidah is not a place where you do taqleed, as we mentioned many times before. So he didn't really say Al-Ash'ari are from Ahl al-Bid'ah. خلاص? And you are just relying on the translation. You are just relying on the translation. Be aware of the English translation. I translated Lum'at al-I'tiqad and explained it, right? I promise you, you'll find a lot of disastrous change in the English translation of Lum'at al-I'tiqad, to the extent that I started reading the Arabic text to the students and I tell them, I'll just translate this part as Google. I'll just give you the meaning of each word in the sentence, to be surprised that it's different from what the translator said. He didn't say Al-Ash'ari are from Ahl al-Bid'ah. He said that we do not know any sect that hides its madhab like al-Zanadiqa wal-Ash'ari, and he combined them like Kuffar wal-Ash'ari. Both are hiding their madhab. revise the Arabic one. Just please revise the Arabic one. You'll see some differences, some effective differences. And in the end, remember, it's called istithna in Arabic. And the istithna has types in Arabic, one of which is al-munfasil. Please revisit the same sentence in Arabic. And I keep telling you, you'll find al-istisna, and the istisna has meanings. And if you are not really familiar with what I'm saying, I promise you that what he said is a little bit different from what you said, but let's agree on the general meaning that somehow he talked about al-Ashari, and in a harsh way. He talked about them in a very harsh way. Does the Hanabilah follow him? No. Actually, the rest of the Hanabilah after him, especially the Mutaakhirin, they consider al-Ash'ariyya to be from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. طيب. When will the next discussion be available? Maybe next week, inshallah. Hopefully next week. Or this week. Friday, Saturday, we might consider something. If not, then Monday. Most probably Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are the best days for me. Last question. This is the last question. Yes. Thank you. Barakallahu feekum. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. See you inshallah soon. If you still have questions, bring them to the next live session. والله تعالى أعلى وأعلم وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.